By now, you've probably heard the term the Great Reset and have heard all kinds of bits and pieces here and there about what it is and maybe even some various perspectives on what it could actually mean. And more than likely, you've even been discouraged from further inquiry by corporate media minions like CNN's Brian Stelter as an Alex Jones, Glenn Beck level conspiracy theory that only crazy people are worried about. Well, today I just want to simply analyze what the Great Reset is by going straight to the horse's mouth, which is the World Economic Forum's own website and statement about their 8 predictions for 2030. And I'll link the article below so you can go look at it for yourself. And most importantly, since most of you know me as a financial independence enthusiast who helps people start online businesses, stick around to the end of the video where I'll discuss some key preventive measures you should be taking to buttress yourself against any kind of economic crisis, including the possibility of this rather ominous and looming Great Reset. Let's get into it. Okay, so there are 8 predictions the World Economic Forum is making about what the world will look like in 2030. Let's go through them briefly first, and then we'll unpack each one in a little more detail. Number 1, all products will have become services, i.e. you will own nothing and be happy. Number 2, there is a global price on carbon. Number 3, US dominance is over. We have a handful of global powers. Number 4, farewell to hospital, hello to homespital. Number 5, we are eating much less meat. Number 6, today's Syrian refugees, 2030's CEOs. Number 7, values that built the West will have been tested to the breaking point. And number 8, by the 2030s, we'll be ready to move humans toward the red planet. Now, in full transparency, as we dig into this, I'm a born-again, Bible-believing Christian, and as such, I'm actually rather horrified by the rather dark possibility any, let alone all, of these predictions coming to pass would bring to us. As I'll make the case for in my own analysis, I believe these predictions and intentions are truly intended to undermine personal liberties, personal property rights, national sovereignty, and display an overarchingly arrogant, savior-like worldview held by our global elite overlords. And besides all of that, there are some very confusing non sequiturs, which is just a fancy way of saying the logic does not follow in some of these points, and I'll make sure to point those out. More on all of that a little later. Let's jump into each one individually, and I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments below. Number 1, all products will have become services. I quote, "I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes," writes Danish MP Ida Auken. "Shopping is a distant memory in the city of 2030 whose inhabitants have cracked clean energy and borrow what they need on demand." It sounds utopian until she mentions that her every move is tracked, and outside the city live swaths of discontents, the ultimate depiction of a society split in two. This is the you'll own nothing and you'll be happy part of the prediction famously seen in the World Economic Forum Great Reset video. That all sounds eerily familiar to medieval serfdom with the new and terrifying dimension of absolutely zero privacy. I mean, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy? I thought property rights were a good thing and ownership entailed responsibility. You mean to tell me I won't even own my own clothes? That's just weird. So the question is then, who owns all the stuff? And more importantly, what will the owner of all the stuff do if I say or do something they don't like, since my every thought, move, and behavior is being tracked? Also, note the Orwellian commentary about the swaths of discontents who live outside the city. Who are those people, and will I be one of them? Probably. This is not off to a good start. Number 2, there is a global price on carbon. And I quote, "China took the lead in 2017 with a market for trading the right to emit a ton of CO2, setting the world on a path towards a single carbon price and a powerful incentive to ditch fossil fuels," predicts Jane Burston, head of climate and environment at the UK's National Physical Laboratory. Europe, meanwhile, found itself at the center of the trade in cheap, efficient solar panels as prices for renewables fell sharply. Now, this all just sounds like a giant plot to restrict my freedom of movement, taking away my car, etc., to harvest more of my labor in the form of carbon taxes and likely all the other penalties, fees, and surcharges they seem to love to extract from us in the process. As you'll see, it's all more about control and less about debate with these folks. Number 3, US dominance is over. We have a handful of global powers. Nation states will have staged a comeback, writes Robert Muga, research director at the Iragape Institute. Instead of a single force course, a handful of countries, the US, Russia, China, Germany, India, and Japan, chief among them, show semi-imperial tendencies. However, at the same time, the role of the state is threatened by trends including the rise of cities and the spread of online identities. This one is just weird. Nation states will have staged a comeback? What does that mean? I thought nation states were still a thing, right? I mean, we all live in countries right now. And what is the rise of cities and the spread of online identities? What does that have to do with global powers? This seems to be one of those non sequiturs to me. Not very well explained at all. And my question is this just intentional neuro-linguistic programming we've come to expect from large-scale propaganda? 4. Farewell to hospital, hello homespital. Technology will have further disrupted diseases, writes Melanie Walker, a medical doctor and World Bank advisor. The hospital as we know it will be on its way out, with fewer accidents thanks to self-driving cars and great strides in preventive and personalized medicine. Scalpels and organ donors are out. Tiny robotic tubes and bioprinted organs are in. Again, Weirdsville. First of all, the term spittle has historically been defined as a hospital for the poor or for lepers. What are they trying to tell us? Second of all, if they're planning on having 3D printed organs by 2030, I mean, really? And by the way, if I have a serious medical issue, I would always prefer to go have a face-to-face conversation with my doctor. Just saying. By the way, if you find this kind of content helpful, it would mean the world to me if you smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Number 5, we're eating much less meat. Rather like our grandparents, we will treat meat as a treat rather than a staple, writes Tim Benton, professor of population ecology at the University of Leeds, UK. It won't be big agriculture or little artisan producers that win, but rather a combination of the two with convenience food redesigned to be healthier and less harmful to the environment. I say no thanks. I tried being a vegetarian myself for about 3 years and it just about killed me. And actually, it was just an excuse for me to eat more sugar. And besides, have you seen the ingredients of these plant-based meat alternatives? Yuck. And again, no thanks. I'll keep my meat. Number 6, today's Syrian refugees, 2030's CEOs. Highly educated Syrian refugees will have come of age by 2030, making the case for the economic integration of those who have been forced to flee conflict. The world needs to be better prepared for populations on the move, writes Lorna Solis, founder and CEO of the NGO Blue Rose Compass, as climate change will have displaced 1 billion people. Now, while I'm all about the underdog being given an opportunity to win, that's kind of my story in a nutshell as well, this is not at all what's being talked about here. This is really just a naked ploy at further disintegrating national sovereignty through weapons of mass migration. I mean, look at what's happening at the US southern border as we speak. And no, that's not because of climate change. Number 7, the values that built the West will have been tested to the breaking point. We forget the checks and balances that bolster our democracies at our peril, writes Kenneth Roth, executive director of Human Rights Watch. This sounds like a bunch of gibberish to me. I mean, I can definitely see that the Judeo-Christian values of the West are being tested to the breaking point as we speak. And it looks like the end of the West may very well be imminent. I don't know. But what does we forget the checks and balances that bolster our democracies at our peril even mean? Is that a question or a statement? And this is just kind of another non sequitur to me. It's not very clear. Number 8, by the 2030s, we'll be ready to move humans toward the red planet. What's more, once we get there, we'll probably discover evidence of alien life, writes Ellen Stofan, chief scientist at NASA. Big science will help us to answer big questions about life on Earth, as well as opening up practical applications for space technology. I would just prefer to stay here on Earth. Now, if you all want to go to Mars, be my guest. Again, I say no thank you. And also, Mars by 2030, I mean, really, is that going to be possible? Also, look at the blind faith being required of big science. I mean, it's just weird. So, in conclusion, if you're anything like I am, all of this good intention is really nothing but a lot of deranged megalomania being put forth by our global elite overlords, drunk on their own wealth and power and caught in their own insatiable appetite for ever more, all wrapped in flowery neuro-linguistic programming propaganda language. So how can you and I escape this? I mean, the real answer is I don't really know if we can escape it at this point. It all seems like a very ambitious plan on their part, and while I'm inclined to think it's really beyond reasonably attainable, there actually have been so many shocking things that have happened over the past couple of years that make me believe that they're really going for the jugular particular on this one. And sadly, given the overarching responses of the general populace to the overarching global medical tyranny imposed over the past couple of years, I literally have zero faith in my fellow human beings to resist this. Now, I hope that I'm wrong, but I suspect that I'm not, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Actually, the good old Bible has a lot to say about all of this in the books of Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation. I'll leave that for another video if you guys want me to get more into it, and just let me know if you do in the comments below. Now, what can you do about all this? Number one, get out of all consumer debt and mortgage debt if you have the ability. Number two, build a giant emergency fund of at least 6 months to a year of expenses. Number three, diversify a reasonable percentage of your net worth out of fiat denominated assets into things like gold, silver, and Bitcoin. It's not financial advice, and there is a link to my Basics of Bitcoin guide in the video description below. And number four, diversify your sources of income by starting and growing an online business as a side hustle at first. Now, I know that all four of those may be a little easier said than done and probably sounds a little bit overwhelming. So to help you out, I have 2 free resources to either get you started or to help you continue your momentum on these things. Number one is my 8 Steps to Erase Debt, the Foundations of Financial Independence workshop. And number 2 is my How to Start and Grow an Online Business Quick Start Guide. The links for both of those are in the video description below. And for more background on this important subject, check out my video of Dave Ramsey versus Glenn Beck on the Great Reset. Make sure to click over to this video and I'll see you over there.